You're watching Q News. We begin a special coverage on the breaking developments from Gaza. Reports are emerging of a significant escalation as the Israeli media has confirmed the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, with media outlets pointing to DNA tests suggesting Sinwar may have been killed during a military operation in Rafah. So stay tuned. What we know so far is that the Israeli media and the Israeli Broadcasting Corporation have been announcing the killing of Yahya al-Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, following an operation in the Gaza Strip that said had targeted militants. In the time being, there's no immediate comment from Hamas upon this escalation, upon this operation. After reviewing the DNA evidence and after taking samples, it was examined, and according to the Israeli media, Yahya Sinwar has been killed, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Now again, with this breaking news, we have reports that are emerging right now from the Israeli media confirming the assassination of the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, in an operation that the Israeli media has said was conducted in the Gaza Strip and had been targeting militants. Now we don't know right now whether this operation was targeting Sinwar himself. However, we know what the Israeli media has been saying, that Yahya Sinwar has been confirmed being dead after this operation and after DNA tests and samples were taken from this operation. Now, for more analysis, we are joined now by Ambassador Mohammad Hijazi, the former Assistant Minister of the Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Ambassador, to Q News. Now, what are the potential immediate repercussions in the conflict as a whole after what we've seen now from the reports emerging about the killing of Yahya Sinwar?
Target killing of leaders, being it in Hezbollah or Hamas, is among the Israelis' tactics to control over the territory, being it in Gaza or in Lebanon. It is an important escalation, and it does not carry truly the right answer. The Israelis have to understand that no matter how many will they kill, the will of the people will continue. They have assassinated Ismail Haniyeh and Kim Sinwar, and many will replace him. It is about the determination of the people of Palestine towards their homeland, towards their statehood. And I don't think that this is the right answer. The Israeli right-wingers should understand that there is a peace process that could have led us all to shore and find a solution. The Egyptian, Qatari, American efforts were supported by the Israeli rigid position and led us to more killing of people, while the time is now very complicated and difficult as all eyes goes to Iran and the situation. The regional efforts is going on. The Iranian foreign minister was in Egypt in 8 legs visit, where he visited many of the regional decision-making capitals. And I think if the Israelis insisting in working all the time with the military, they may pay a hefty price. I don't think that this will end the resistance in Gaza, and a replacement will come soon, but the hatred will continue. And the answer is not right. And the only thing that the international community should intervene, because this is a televised war crime. You cannot really go on like this. You are bringing the whole region to a situation where we all are very worried. I think the Iranian message came to Cairo and other capitals that they don't want escalation, and a solution should be envisaged through diplomatic efforts.
Ambassador, now before the confirmation of the killing of Yahya Sinwar, there has been reports, there were reports that were saying that perhaps this operation was not really targeting Sinwar himself. However, Yahya Sinwar just happened to be there. Do you think it makes a difference? And what do you think of these statements and these reports?
Well, the collateral damage and the random attacks by the Israeli Air Force might have led to the killing of Yahya Sinwar. This is not, but they can also, if it is random, kill the Israeli as they've done before prisoners or hostages. The idea of killing 66,000 Palestinians through random attacks, they know very well that Hamas from day one is in the underground. So they know very well that they are committing a war crime by attacking civilians with a magnitude that we didn't see even in the Second World War, using all the brutal tools they have with the silence of the international community and full cooperation of the Americans. Take, for example, the possible attack on Iran. We all saw the B-2 strategic bombarding machine that is now attacking the Houthi in Yemen. Do the Houthi need a B-2 strategic bombarding machine like the B-2, or it is prepared to participate in a possible Israeli attack on the Iranian bases or even nuclear facility that will lead the region to a danger that the foreign minister of Iran came to address through his 8 legs visit. And I think the voice of wisdom is absent in Israel, of course. This is no doubt, but the international community being silent is committing also another crime by allowing Israel to continue of doing what they want to achieve. And if they continue what they are doing in Gaza, they move now to general attack on the north, including Abalia, where they have targeted randomly Ismail Sinwar, but they are getting help even from Britain, from U.S., of course, and many others. So I think the escalation in the Middle East will lead us to a situation where we all will pay a very heavy price. And I think the West is committing a grave mistake by thinking that through war machines like this of Israel, they can attain goals like curbing on Iran supporters or arms in the region, because we saw up till today that no one Lebanese village in the south fall in the hands of the Israelis, but we saw many Israelis killed, and that reminds me of what happened on the 6th of October war, when Israelis or Israel has lost 12,000. They could have 12,000 soldiers. They could have, as Rabin stated in his memo, they could have accepted, like Nasser, when he, in 1968, accepted the Rogers peace plan. We could have avoided all this bloodshed. But again, Israel is still following its violent and brutal trajectory, and I think the Americans are helping, and are helping very clearly. And
that's not really what the White House press secretary has been saying, Ambassador, has she? Now, she was talking earlier about how they have been having conversations about de-escalating and perhaps these conversations are still ongoing. Now, what do you think of these statements?
I tell you, if they said that we are urging the Israelis to allow the humanitarian aid to get into Gaza immediately, and they give them an ultimatum to apply for 1 month. During this 1 month, the American election will take place. So it is a decision or a position that does not really sustain, because they said you can apply this decision or you can comply to our threat in a month's time. In a month's time, passing 5th of November, means that the election will take place, and new administration will not be able even to look at the previous administration decisions, because they will not be in office up till February 2025. So you see that the Americans had a year, and from the 7th of October last year, they have a year to go, seeing the carnage happen in front of their eyes, seeing the diplomatic efforts of Egypt, Qatar, and the Americans fall into the flow by the Israeli continuous aggression. And the aggression in Gaza have led them now to aggress Hezbollah in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon. And now what they have done in the north of Gaza, evacuating and collateral damaging buildings and killing all what moves in Gaza, have put them in an appetite to continue what they have done in Gaza in southern Lebanon, where the southern part of Beirut is almost in the same trajectory of abolishing by collateral attacks, and that will lead us nowhere. And the Iranian expecting attacks by the Israelis might lead us to believe that Washington is giving just unfounded threats, and they just hide the tune against Israel, but with no value at all. And I think they are only trying to protect themselves if the Israeli took a strategic attack on Iran, that the Americans are siding themselves, and they don't want to be seen as part of the attack, so that their interests and troops and bases in the region will not be attacked by the Iranians. But one has to notice two very important statements, one in action like the B-2 being seen in Yemen. This is very threatening and important development. The second is the Russian foreign minister statement that I will not declare if the strategic partnership between Russia and Iran includes in itself a Russian cooperation with Iran. Like if they have a strategic dialogue with Iran and a strategic agreement, he didn't want to disclose if it carries common defense. And if that is the case, we are not talking about regional expected war. We are talking about something else, something more threatening and much more danger to the region and to the world community, being Russia siding with Iran, and the Americans, of course, siding for almost a year now with Israel.
Well, let's talk about what's going on with Hamas right now. Do you think, now I've been seeing what we are reporting and what we are showing on Qnews right now. From the archive images, I've seen Yahya Sinwar, and we've seen him along Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated last July. Now, do you think that this could cripple the capacity of Hamas? We've seen Israel assassinating Hassan Nasrallah, who's the leader of Hezbollah, and there have been analysts who are saying this could cripple Hezbollah, this could not cripple Hezbollah. Capacities could change from one period to the other. What do you think is going to happen with Hamas?
Yeah, definitely. there will be an effect. You cannot ignore that assassinating a leader of the movement, being it Ismail Haniyeh or Yahya Sinwar, will have no effect. It will have an impact on the ground, but in the hierarchy and structure of such organizations, it is not about persons. It is not about a leader. It is about an organizational framework that will allow Hamas, as it happened with Iran, with Lebanon. It might take a few days till a new leader will appear. And I have to say that Israel is making a grave mistake if they understood that target assassination is a key to any solution. We have seen in all liberation movements a similar attempt by colonial power to attack and assassinate leaders, but it led us nowhere. Let me remind you that since the 60s onward, up till many years, the Israelis have assassinated many leaders of the PLO, and the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian PLO remain working to attain the goals of people. So all the liberation movements.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because Matthew Miller from the State Department from the United States have been saying that when he was asked about how you can fight an idea and a military capacity, and he said that obviously you cannot really eliminate an idea with military capacity. You can try, but the right discourse is the political action and the political strategy. What do you think is going to happen, and how the United States are going to react to the ongoing military operations targeting leaders of Hamas and targeting militants of Hamas in a time where the United States is saying that you cannot really kill this idea?
Absolutely, I do subscribe to the same idea that liberation movements or resistance movements will not give arms and give up arms until they see a light in the end of the tunnel. Remember that the IRA in Ireland, Northern Ireland, were described as terrorists. Many of their leaders and political parties were arrested, killed, and collaterally attacked, but it did not end and give up their arms till the Good Friday Agreement was signed, and Britain has given up their position in Ireland, and the Irish people are enjoying their liberation and independence, and their liberation or resistance movement did not give up arms to the UN until they saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is what should happen with Hamas or Hezbollah, that the Israelis should commit themselves to international legality and international will and reality, calling for a Palestinian state living side by side. You cannot, as a society, live on the edge of the sword. As they said, Israel should not only comply for the benefit of a Palestinian state to the Palestinian people, but also to the well-being of the Israeli people who cannot live like that. This is the first war that Israel is conducting for almost a year and more, and it is the first war that is fought on the Israeli territory, inside their cities, and this situation is not really conducive to any good to the Israeli people, to the region, and to the world.
It's the longest war, too, isn't it, Ambassador? Do you think it's going to escalate in such a manner that would invite other sides during this period?
I gave you two examples. The B-2 being in the region, and this is not a good sign. against the Houthi, yes, but the presence of the B-2 at this very important juncture where Israel is preparing to retaliate from the Iranian second wave of attacks. The second element that we have to bear in mind is the strategic cooperation framework between Iran and Russia, where the Russian foreign minister said that I am not going to disclose the content if there is an article related to joint self-defense. I guess that we have to watch carefully what will happen between Israel and Iran if it is a calculated attack, controlled and targeting military sites. I think it will be maybe tolerated and dealt with in Iran. But if it is a strategic attack in compliance, in complicity of the United States and in full knowledge of what will happen against the strategic position of the Iranian facilities of their nuclear program, or if it attacks also the oil-producing centers, I think we will face retaliation, and huge retaliation might reach not only Israel, but the American positions in the Middle East, and their troops under a lot of stress, I have to say.
Ambassador, you've mentioned something, I just wrote it down because I wanted to discuss it later, and it's about the Israeli government waiting for the results of the U.S. elections. Do you think now? I'm sure you've seen that there are analysts who've been saying that, well, Netanyahu is waiting for Donald Trump. Do you think that what Netanyahu is doing right now in his strategy, he has in the back of his mind that perhaps Donald Trump is going to get in the White House and aid me once more blindly?
The coming few months will be detrimental for the Middle East. If the right-wing government in Israel is waiting the coming of the right-wingers in Washington, the Republican of Donald Trump, that is a risk in itself, because I think still there is clear competition. But between Democrats and Republicans, I don't see really a big difference. Maybe this one will complete. Biden have exerted, and his Democratic party has exerted what Israel wouldn't have even dreamt of, full support at the UN to prevent even the international community to take decisions in the Security Council, in the International Court of Justice, in the International Criminal Court, and in many other avenues. The Democrats were fully engaged, if not compliant, with Israel. And I don't see the Republican will do damage to the region more than what has happened with the Democrats. So I think it is about Israel being a tool, like a war contractor to an American overall strategy or global strategy, where the Israeli people and the Israeli army are used to manage a situation that finally serves the interest of Washington. But I guess this situation requires that the Israelis understand that unless they want to live in this region with peace and tranquility, they will pay a price, and hefty price, inside their cities and their economy. And no matter what they are getting from Washington, it will not be enough, because there is loss of life. And many Israelis will regret that, like what happened in the 6th of October, a war between Egypt and Israel, where 12,000 Israeli soldiers were killed, and they could have been prevented, like Ishaq Rabin wrote in his memory. They could have been prevented. Stupid that did not happen. It was 1968 when we accepted the peace call of William Rogers, Secretary of State of the United States at that time, and Israel refused, caused us a regional war. Same here. Today, when we are talking about wars and killings, it will cost the Israelis today maybe 400 soldiers killed, thousands were injured, economies crippled, and many other negative side effects on the psyche of the Israelis. Imagine that Israel is now under a court order by the ICJ for genocide. Imagine that the genocide crime that was created after the Second World War for the Jews who were exterminated in the Second World War, that they are subject to the same decision. This is huge to the psyche of the Israeli people, that they are committing the same crime that they have been haunting the whole world, talking about it after the Second World War.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Mohammad Hijazi, former Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining us on Q News and for your valuable insights. Now, let me repeat what we have been covering right now. The Israeli media has announced the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, following an operation in the Gaza Strip that said it had been targeting militants. And after taking DNA samples and evidence, it was examined and announced that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, has been killed. Now, for more analysis on this matter, we are joined now by Ms. Ratiba Al-Nacha, member of the Palestinian National Action Council. Welcome, Ms. Ratiba, to Q News. Now, what is your first reaction when you heard about the death of Yahya Sinwar in this operation that the Israeli media have announced?
Actually, we didn't take any announcement from the Israeli side as a real fact till we didn't have any evidence in the Palestinian side or announcement from Hamas itself that says that Sinwar has been killed or not yet. Still, what Israel is saying, that he has suspicious that this body that they found is for Yahya Sinwar, and they still looking for to make like DNA test to make sure if it's his body or not. But we used to hear like these announcements before of affiliating leaders in the Palestinian Liberation Movement or in the Hamas side or in Hezbollah side, but not most of these news were really a real fact. Sometimes it's just to know more information or to know how is the reaction of the people and the street of announcing such a news like that. So till now, we didn't take this as a serious news or a fact, a real fact, yet till we didn't have any information from Hamas side that says that Sinwar has been killed. And I think that they have even since months or weeks difficulties to reach to Sinwar or have any attach with him as Hamas itself. So how can we make sure that this that this news is real facts or not yet?
Well, we're waiting for more confirmation from both sides. However, we've been reporting and we've been reviewing what has been going on, and perhaps because what you've been saying, then how they can actually confirm this. Reports have been emerging, Ms. Ratiba, that perhaps this operation was not really actually targeting Yahya Sinwar. He just happens to be there at the time of this operation. If it's true, if Yahya al-Sinwar was actually there and the DNA evidence was examined and confirmed, what do you think this is going to affect the Hamas, for starters, and the whole conflict as a whole?
It will not affect Hamas anyway, because before that they associated Yassin, the founder of Hamas, Ahmad Yassin, the founder of Hamas, and nothing changed in Hamas itself. I think what will change is what is in the Israeli side, according to the negotiation about the hostages, and if they still want to negotiate about this issue and this file. And I think that 3 days ago we started to hear from Gallant that he's saying that no more negotiation will be taken in the old way that has been taken through the last year. So I think this kind of news is aimed to give like a reason or a purpose to changing the path of negotiating on the hostages file.
But it's not just news, Ms. Ratiba. It's not just news. They have the Israeli occupation army and military. They have assassinated Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah. They have assassinated Ismail Haniyeh. So they're targeting the leaders of Hezbollah and the leaders of Hamas. It's not just news.
Yeah,
that's a strategy.
Yeah, but what is happening? Yeah, but what is happening in the Israeli street is something different, because people are pushing the government to have like an agreement about returning back the hostages, and the government is not putting this file on the top of its priorities. So they want something to tell it to the Israeli street why they are not putting this file in the top priority and didn't achieve one of the main goals of this war, is returning back the hostages. So by killing the Sinwar, if it's true, they will have like this excuse for the Israeli street itself, not for the international community, of course, because they didn't care about the international community or the world or the Palestinian side. So I think the excuse of changing the path of negotiation and saying that it's a blocked way to get more negotiation on this file is by announcing that Yahya Sinwar, the only one that have the access to those hostages and have the right to get the decision about this case, is killed. So there's no one to negotiate with him the hostages case, and they can go on in this war without switching.
However, if it was confirmed,
the hostages as one priority or one goal of this.
Ms. Ratiba, if it's confirmed that what these reports are saying are untrue, it could really backfire, couldn't it?
Everything is possible, I think. But it's a strategy.
I mean, why would they do that? Because it could really backfire. If what you're saying is true, if they're just trying to spread the news, and then the reports would just say, no, Yahya Sinwar, he's not dead, he's alive, don't you think that would backfire and it would put more pressure on the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think this will give them like a window of time in somehow, and they say that they are trying to associate Yahya Sinwar as a target of one of the top leaders of Hamas who planned and implemented this attack in the 7th of October. So they are making efforts to achieve these goals. This is what will be the answer. After they got like a window of time and a window or an excuse to make more and more killing in Gaza Strip or another plans that they are planning. We have like several plans now on the table, on the Israeli table, in the Knesset and the cabinet, that they are discussing what will happen in the north of Gaza. And this will give them like a space to discuss these proposals for maybe a few days before they know if Yahya Sinwar is killed or not. And I think either if Yahya Sinwar was really killed or not, Hamas will not pronounce this or confirm this very soon. Maybe it will take like days before they confirm his killed or say that he is not killed yet. So I think they will buy a window of time to make more space for them for their plan as Israelis.
Okay, I want to go back to my question because you've answered the first half of the question, which is how it impacts Hamas. Now, what are the implications for if it's true, if Yahya Sinwar was actually killed? What implications could happen in the conflict as a whole after what we've been seeing in Lebanon from escalation and the ongoing operations and escalations in the Gaza Strip?
Still, I think that that killing Yahya Sinwar will not affect directly the conflict and what is happening, because what is happening is not about Yahya Sinwar, it's about like a regional plan. And maybe we can return back to 1996 when Netanyahu became the first time the president of Israel, and he made like a plan for the new Middle East. And one part of this plan that is put in by Jewish American as like a council, that he makes it like a council committee for him, is to create a new Middle East. And this new Middle East needs to have not just economic agreements and divorce agreements with the Arab states and the region, but to try to correct what Ben-Gurion didn't complete yet by making the Palestinian or letting the Palestinian in Yehuda wa Samar, or the land of Israel, and not transfer all of them. So he is trying now to correct this mistake by transferring the Palestinians and to kill as much as he could from the Palestinians to force others to be transferred or to leave their land. So I think it's not about Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar is a new leader in Hamas. He's not the leader since he was the leader since just the 7th of October, the first leader in Hamas in Gaza. But before that, he wasn't. So I think that the case is not about Yahya Sinwar, and Yahya Sinwar will not change the whole scenario about what is happening. They killed as well the head leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, and nothing changed in the equation. So I think in the equation of Gaza as well, nothing will be changed by killing Yahya Sinwar. It's an idea. It's about people who are looking for liberation, and they are very stick to their land and homeland, and they will never leave it. It's not just about Hamas. It's about the Palestinian people. We exist on this land, and we refuse to be transferred to anywhere else. And this is the conflict, and the real conflict. And it's not about Yahya Sinwar. Again, we can have like hundreds like Yahya Sinwar be born every minute in Palestine till this conflict ends.
What do you think the international community is going, or how it's going to react? Specifically when we're talking about regional actors such as Egypt or Qatar, because they have been very active in trying to mediate and facilitate any kind of negotiations for a ceasefire or a peace deal for the stability of the region.
Yes, Qatar announced several times, that the real obstacles of having or achieving any agreement is Netanyahu and the Israeli side. So I think by killing Yahya Sinwar, that they will have like a new reason why it's impossible to have this deal, and still the Israeli find ways to make it impossible to get to any deals in this situation or ceasefire for so many reasons. And now they have another reason that there is no one to negotiate with by killing Yahya Sinwar. It's very clear for Qatar, for everyone, that not for everyone, for Qatar especially, and maybe for the Arab region, that Israel is the real obstacle. But in the other way, in the other hand, all over the world, they think that Hamas is a terrorist action, and by killing Yahya Sinwar, they get revenge or killed one of the leaders of this terrorist around the world.
But there have been calls for de-escalation, Ms. Ratiba. There have been calls for de-escalation in the region in light of what's happening in Lebanon, in light of what's happening in the Gaza Strip. Whether you believe these statements or not, but these statements were urging all sides to de-escalate, and others were trying to put pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire at the moment. How far are we from such a deal at the moment, right now?
If they didn't stop importing weapons to Israel, it means nothing. These announcements means nothing. These announcement is meaning nothing, meaningless, if it's not compared with an action. An action means that cutting weapons from Israel, punishment on Israel for not and putting Israel under the international law. This is the only way to say that these countries are really serious in ceasefire and in controlling the situation in the Middle East, not to explore more and more. Without these things, all these announcements is just speeches and just a word that means nothing. Still, we have Germany that is willing to give Israel more and more weapons. Still, we have the United States is giving Israel unlimited access to its weapons as well. And other countries put some limitation, but they didn't cut out all these weapons from Israel, and they used these weapons to kill the Palestinians and to explore this conflict more and more. And now they are threatening more countries, not just Gaza Strip and Lebanon. They are trying, they are exploring to Syria, to Iraq, to Yemen, and I don't know on the left next.
All right, now let me just state a few reports now that have been coming in talking about the operation that presumably killed Yahya Sinwar. And according to the Israeli media, it has been an operation that afterwards a drone was sent to actually confirm the death of Sinwar, and that was in Tal al-Sultan in the Gaza Strip. Ms. Ratiba, we've been seeing now reports from the detainees' families. They're trying to pressure the Israeli government to do anything right now for a ceasefire deal at the moment. What do you think? What kind of pressure do you think is going to actually succeed right now? And do you think the Israeli government is actually going to listen to that? If it's not the international community, if it's not regional actors, do you think the families of the detainees would have any kind of pressure right now on the Israeli government in light of all these events?
I don't think that the families of the hostages have any impact on Netanyahu's decisions, and this was very clear. This was very clear all the year around, and I think the only way is that the United States took a real action in cutting the weapons and exploring the weapons and the access of Israel to the American weapons. This is the only way that can force Israel to stop to stop this war. And without cutting these weapons, they will continue for another 2 years, as a Smotrich said.
Do you think it's possible for the U.S. to cut the weapons?
Till 2026. So I think, yes.
Do you think, Ms. Ratiba, do you think it's possible for the United States to actually cut the weapons from going to Israel right now? Because we've seen reports about the United States trying to have a conversation with the Israeli government and with Benjamin Netanyahu, and whether they are threats or warning, however, whatever we might call it, but there have been statements about we need a ceasefire deal right now, and if it's not going to happen, we're going to cut the weapons. Do you think it's true?
I think that the Israeli IPAC, or the IPAC in America, is stronger than the Congress. So I think that America didn't have the will to stop importing weapons to Israel, and they didn't have the ability to do that right now.
You're talking about the Israeli lobbying.
I'm not,
Yeah, continue, please.
Yeah, the Israeli lobby.
Yeah, continue, please.
Yeah, I think that the Israeli lobby in America is stronger than the Congress. So I think that America didn't have the real ability to cut these weapons right now. Maybe if something huge happens that threatens the American interest in the Middle East, just in this case, maybe they can force the United States to change its statutes and to take an action to cut these weapons from Israel. So I don't know what is this thing that can be. If it's, I don't know. I don't want to say this scenario. It's like if we have like a third world war, maybe, or a threat for having third world war, or maybe a great country such like Russia enter this war. Maybe the United States will feel that she must recalculate its decisions and to take a decision to cut these weapons from Israel. But till that moment, I think that there is nothing can stop Israel from making what she is planning to do, or what it's planning to do since years. It's more than, I'm talking about more than 35 years of planning for this moment, that is Netanyahu waiting for it to make his new Middle East, that Israel lives in it in peace and no exist for the Palestinian state in this Middle East.
Well, thank you very much. That was Ratiba Al-Nacha. And we are joined now by Mr. Bassem Yassin, the military affairs expert from Beirut. Welcome, Mr. Yassin. Now, what is your first reaction when hearing about the potential elimination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas right now?
Yeah, I wasn't shocked. I know that one time or another we will hear news like this. Really, because he's not the first Hamas leader who was assassinated, and he won't be the last. There's a 3 before him, and now he's the number 4. The problem is what's gonna be happening in Gaza after the assassination of Yahya Sinwar. What will be the problems with the POWs that Hamas has them? Could be a path to negotiation in resolving the situation in Gaza or not? It's still too early to think about that and to figure out if the assassination of Yahya Sinwar is a good thing for the Palestinian people or a bad thing. What we know that he chose the way he wants to be dead. He wasn't hiding in a tunnel. He wasn't holding some prisoners like a shield for him. He chose the way he wanted to be killed, and really, I wasn't shocked at all. After
Mr. Yassin, the reports that we're getting from the Israeli media has been stating that this operation was targeting 3 militants, and Yahya Sinwar just happened to be one of them. Do you believe that it was not really targeting Yahya Sinwar, and do you believe the reports coming from the Israeli media?
Yeah, I've read all the media related to Yahya Sinwar assassination. I think so. Okay, they met the 3 military personnel. They dealt with them, and by coincidence, it found out that one of them is Yahya Sinwar. I do believe that because yeah, now I read from the Channel 12, the Israeli Channel 12, that the killing of Yahya Sinwar happened yesterday, not today. And
no, the reports are saying that the operation was actually conducted at dawn. So perhaps it started yesterday and just continued into the following day.
Yeah, right. So they took all the time in order to examine all the evidence that could lead to confirm that Yahya Sinwar is dead. And they want to take the time in order to figure out what will be the consequences of such notice to the public and to the Hamas people as well. You know, yeah, it's so sad to hear about that, but that's their faith. It's really not shocking. You know? It's normal.
Okay. If the reports are true, Mr. Yassin, what kind of impact could it have on Hamas?
I don't think it will be some tragic impacts. You know, Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated 2 weeks ago, and you see after the assassination, Hezbollah is recovering from that, and I guess in Hamas it will be the same. There will be someone who will take the lead, and we hope that he will be wise enough in order to deal with all the issues that Hamas faces now and all the Palestinian people facing out now.
But the Israeli aggression towards Hamas in the last year was much severe than its aggression towards Hezbollah, and the escalation in southern Lebanon is just was perhaps in the last few weeks. However, the Israeli war on Gaza and against Hamas was in the past year.
Yeah, right.
So there's a difference here. Do you think that Hamas could actually be crippled by the assassination of its leader when Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated last July?
Yeah, it was. There were an easy transition from Ismail Haniyeh to Yahya Sinwar, and now we really don't know who will be replacing Yahya Sinwar. But if somebody was ready to take the lead, it will be an easy way. But Yahya Sinwar, he has his name and his reputation, and he was really holding up all the cards regarding to Hamas and the war with the Israelis. Now, the replacement could take that responsibility. Is he ready enough in order to manage all what's happening now in Gaza? Really, let's wait and see. We have to wait 2 or 3 days in order to judge if the death of Yahya Sinwar will be a tragedy for Hamas or it's normal and the track kept going.
Okay, now, what are the military strategies now on the table in front of the Israeli occupation army? And how do you think they're going to respond to the changing in leadership dynamics within Hamas and obviously within Hezbollah on the other side, if actually Sinwar was confirmed dead in the coming hours? What do you think the strategies they're going to adopt on both sides, in Gaza and in Lebanon?
No, I don't think that will be a change in that in the way that the Israeli army will deal. I guess it will be more pressure on Gaza in order to make the transition so tough and so difficult. But in Lebanon, they will keep the way that they are dealing with Hezbollah in the south. It will be no invasion, no large-scale invasion, because still the resistance in Lebanon is very tough, and they are holding their position up to now in a very good manner. I guess it will be more pressure on Gaza direction, but in Lebanon it will be the same.
Do you think there's going to be a response from Hamas or from Hezbollah if Yahya Sinwar was actually confirmed dead?
In Hezbollah, I don't think that will be any change or something will happen in Lebanese front. The death of Hassan Nasrallah hasn't changed a lot. It's only give the personnel on the south the will to fight, okay, but it will have no effect on the front. But maybe in the Lebanese camps or Palestinian camps in Lebanon, it will be some problems. Maybe they will see some demonstration, some anger, but no more than that. But in Gaza, we have to wait until knowing who will be replacing Yahya Sinwar. Okay, does he have the reputation? Does he have the knowledge in order to deal with all these problems? What he's gonna do with the prisoners of war, and how to deal with the pressure from Qatar, from Egypt, from United States in order to solve the POW's problems. It's still too early to really know what will be happening in Gaza.
How can this actually impact the conflict as a whole? Do you think there are potential implications of Sinwar's death? If we're talking about tactics from Israel, if we're talking about tactics from other players, if we're talking about tactics from Iran, and what do you think the international community is actually going to react with through perhaps statements or possible actions during this conflict?
Maybe some players in the world will see the death of Yahya Sinwar is a positive thing in order to resolve what is happening in Gaza since 1 year, because they think that he's a very tough man. He's really dedicated to Hamas view in liberating Palestine and how to look at Israel. Maybe he was like a rock on the path, but anyway, the other that they were supporting Hamas will see that the death of Sinwar is like the death of Hassan Nasrallah. It's a big hit or something tragic. But really, we have to wait 2 or 3 days in order to see what will be the consequences of that death, since it wasn't expected like this. What happened to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was expected since they made a series of killing, starting from the pager, from the icon, from the Rodwan. Then you will see that there was like a sequence of killing. It will reach Hassan Nasrallah, but in Sinwar, we were not expecting that, since we know that he might be in a very safe place. Since 1 year, they couldn't reach him. Maybe they won't. What happened? It's by coincidence. Really, they are really, now the Israelis are not believing what is happening, and they couldn't realize that it was so easy to confront Yahya Sinwar and to kill him in that way.
We've seen Israeli representatives in the United Nations and the UN Security Council when they've been asked about the responsibility of innocent civilians being killed. They're always pointing towards Hamas, and they're always pointing towards Yahya Sinwar. Now, if Yahya Sinwar was confirmed dead, what do you think they're going to be pointing at right now, and how are they going to be reasoning with the questions of or the accusations of killing innocent people?
You know, the first person we have to put our fingers on is Netanyahu and his government. Because what Yahya Sinwar did was like a reaction for what Israel did to the Palestinian people from the 48 up to now. It's too bad to see the world is looking at the problems in the Middle East in one eye.
Right, but what kind of justification, Mr. Yassin, are they possibly going to use?
No, they will not accuse anyone else than Sinwar. All the Israelis' story was pointing at Sinwar as holding him responsible for all what happened in the 7th of October. But maybe Sinwar, who did the plan for that, but he didn't did everything. So all the Israeli stories now it's in the question now, and I guess we'll see what will happen in the next few days in order to see all the parties what they are doing or how to deal with that.
Well, thank you very much, Bassem Yassin, the military affairs expert from Beirut. Thank you for joining us on Q News and for your insights. Stay with us with this special coverage after the reports of the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, being killed in an operation in Gaza Strip. Stay with us. We'll be back after this.
And you're still watching our coverage on Qnews after the significant developments in which the Israeli occupation army has confirmed the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, during the operation in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupation forces and the security agency has issued a joint statement discussing the possibility of Sinwar's death amid military activity in Gaza. The Israeli army spokesperson has stated that there is a chance that the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been assassinated, but emphasized that at this stage we cannot confirm his death. According to the statement, during an Israeli forces operation in Gaza, 3 Hamas members were killed. In both the army and Israel security agencies are investigating whether Sinwar was among them. However, they reiterated that it is not yet possible to definitely identify those killed. The statement also noted that there are no indications of hostages in the targeted building, adding that the army and security agency continue to operate in the fields under the necessary precautionary measures. It is worth mentioning that Hamas announced on August 6 that Yahya Sinwar was elected as the head of its political bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh. Previously, on July 31, Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, the former head of Hamas political bureau and former Palestinian prime minister, in the Iranian capital of Tehran, where he was visiting for the inauguration of the new Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Haniyeh was killed alongside his personal bodyguards, field leader in the Qasim Brigades, Wassim Abu Shaban. Now, the Israeli media outlets have disclosed that the methods employed by the Israeli army in its announcement of the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, following clashes in Tel Sultan area of Rafah. Reports have indicated that the operation to eliminate Sinwar was conducted without prior arrangements or specific intelligence, as the Israeli army was clearly conducting operations in the Tel Sultan area. The confirmation of Sinwar's DNA match was possible because the Israeli authorities had obtained a previous sample from him, along with a medical file from his time as a prisoner in Israeli custody. Earlier, the Israeli radio reported that the confrontation with Sinwar took place in Tel Sultan, where he was seen wearing military gear alongside another field leader. The Israeli army and the security service stated in a joint announcement that they are investigating the possibility of having eliminated Sinwar during this operation and what they described as military activity in Gaza. The statement noted that the bodies of the 3 individuals labeled as militants, this is how they call the occupation forces called the fighters, were recovered, and investigations are ongoing to determine whether one of them was Sinwar, though a final confirmation of their identities has not yet been made. The Israeli military also confirmed that there were no indications of any Israeli hostages being present in the building where the operation took place. According to the newspaper Yadda'ut Ahranot, the operation also targeted other Hamas leaders, Mahmoud Hamdan and Hani Hamidan, alongside Sinwar, following the Al-Aqsa flood operation on October 7th, 2023. Yahya Sinwar became Israel's top target, along with Mohammed Daif, the commander of the Izzuddin al-Qassam brigades. The removal of Sinwar has become a key strategic objective of the Israeli military operations in Gaza, named Iron Swords, as Israeli officials consider him the mastermind behind the October 7th attack. Now, of course, the abouts of the assassination of Sinwar and what after such developments is still unclear, and the assassination of the leader of Hamas and the leader of the resistance for the Palestinians, and how would that mean for the resisting fighters or the Palestinians at large is unclear. Also, the idea of a ceasefire negotiations, or the ceasefire negotiations, and is it at a dead point at this particular time? The deal also remains ambiguous and not clear. The prospects of the Palestinian resistance after the assassination of Haniyeh and Sinwar, and are there any new leaders who could be confirmed? After the destruction, definitely, of Gaza and today's strikes on Jabalia and Netzrin, what does this mean, and how will that be for Palestinians? What should the Palestinians do at this upcoming stage? The fate also of Palestinian civilians who are unarmed is still also unclear. Where is the whole region, or this expanding of war? What does it mean? The policy itself of assassination or targeting the leaders of resistance, what does it mean? And where is that policy leading to? The U.S. role and as a mediator, and the stance of the U.S. Towards all those developments, and where it is leading to. Of course, the United States has already sent the powerful anti-missile system THAAD and defense system, along with 100 American troops to operate. Right, and we're still with our coverage with all those questions in mind, and I guess we have with us for more analysis is Mr. Khalid Dawood, journalist and managing editor of Al-Ahram weekly newspaper. Mr. Dawood, good evening to you.
Good evening. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. And what strategies might Hamas adopt to counter the loss of its leadership after Sinwar was confirmed dead, and how effective could these strategies be?
Well, first of all, it's indeed a very major blow to the Hamas group after more than a year of the genocide war that the Israelis have been conducting against Palestinians in Gaza. But again, you know, judging by the experience of the leader of the Lebanese group, Hezbollah, Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, who was also assassinated in late September, the most probable scenario is that Hamas will be able to come up with another leader to conduct the operations of the group within Gaza Strip, and of course within the West Bank as well, where Hamas has been active lately. There's no question that this is going to be seen as one kind of a victory for the Israeli side. Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, since the beginning of the war against Gaza, has been insisting that a victory image for him would be represented in the assassination of Mr. Sinwar. But again, the fact that the leader of Hamas, Mr. Ismail Haniyeh, was killed in Tehran in late July, and before that, historically speaking, the Israelis, they've managed to kill many key leaders of the Hamas group, starting with the founder of the group, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, followed by Mr. Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, and many other key figures in Hamas. But the lesson is, with a resistance group like Hamas in particular, definitely the leader plays a very important role, but they've also, because of the secret nature of this organization, they always manage to bring up another leader to continue their struggle, considering that they are a very ideological group who believes in the cause of liberating their land. So I'm sure Mr. Netanyahu will have a lot to celebrate, as well as the Israeli public, considering that they hold Mr. Sinwar responsible for the October 7 attacks. But in terms of the direct operations that are being conducted inside Gaza, and
Mr. Khaled, Mr. Dawood,
Hezbollah in Lebanon,
yes, let me hear.
Necessarily leads to a cessation of
yes, Mr. Dawood, if I might ask you here, you spoke about a very important issue, which is this is not the very first time for Israel to assassinate one of the leaders of the resistance or of Hamas or in Lebanon and all that. If I may ask you here, you said that it is considered for Israel as a success or a victory, but in fact, we've seen after the assassination of Rantisi and of other leaders, Sheikh Yassin, for an instant, and now Haniyeh, and then Sinwar and Hassan Nasrallah, we've seen the rising of new leaders. If I may ask you about the idea of the resistance, and is resistance is an idea, or is it attached to a certain leader? And what does the assassination of Haniyeh, followed by Sinwar and previously before other leaders, what does it mean for the resistance?
Well, as you've mentioned, I mean, it's not about definitely leaders. Of course, leaders might play a very important role in giving in ideas in their strategy of conducting the group itself. But as long as there is the cause of occupation, which the Palestinian people are suffering from, definitely the resistance is going to continue. And the resistance did not start with Hamas. As a matter of fact, Palestinians have been fighting for the rights, even before the defeat of the 1967. And we've seen, first of all, the Fatah movement led by the late Yasser Arafat. At one point, there was the ones leading the resistance. When Arafat passed away, we saw a rise in the power of Hamas, and so how they took the banner, if you might say, in the issue of resisting the Israeli occupation. And of course, I mean, many people believe that the assassination of Mr. Sinwar was not even an intentional Israeli operation. It happened as a matter of coincidence that they were attacking a certain house where they believed fighters were inside. And despite earlier claims that Mr. Sinwar is always surrounded by Israeli hostages to prevent his assassination, the man was there with two other fighters, confirming that he's basically been conducting the fighting on the ground and not hiding in tunnels as the Israelis have continued in their propaganda. So, of course, as long as this Israeli brutality, the Israeli barbarity inside the occupied Palestinian territories continues, the resistance will continue. But, of course, this is a psychological blow to Hamas. They, of course, looked with great esteem at Mr. Sinwar. But again, the strategy and the structure, the way these groups are formed, are based on the fact that as soon as one leader goes, comes up another leader, definitely.
The fate of Palestinians, civilians, and how could the potential escalation of violence impact the humanitarian situation in Gaza, particularly concerning access to aid and resources?
Well, to be honest with you, the humanitarian situation is very much a miserable situation. What we're seeing is an intentional policy of starvation. It's not the issue of enough aid or not enough aid. And I'm sure everybody has seen the letter which the U.S. Defense Secretary and the U.S. Secretary of State have jointly sent to the Israeli Defense Minister just a couple of days ago, last Sunday to be particular, in which they openly criticized the Israelis and they even threatened them that within 30 days, if they did not allow the humanitarian assistance to go through, particularly to northern Gaza, this is going to bring the U.S. administration, the outgoing administration of President Biden, to reconsider the military assistance that they are providing the Israelis, because this policy of starvation and forcing Palestinians to leave their homes and towns in the northern of Gaza basically amounts to a war crime, and it even violates the U.S. laws, let alone international war laws and something like the case which the ICC Prosecutor General is trying to bring against Netanyahu and Gallant. So, I mean, it goes beyond the issue of humanitarian assistance. This is an intentional policy by the Israeli government, by the current right-wing Israeli government, to try to force Palestinians in Gaza to flee their land and to push them towards the Egyptian border. And that's why Egypt has been very firm from the beginning of the war that we are not going to allow any forcible transfer of Palestinians into Egyptian territory. But again, this policy of starvation and not allowing humanitarian aid, it's not just out of desire to punish the Palestinians, but it's actually part of a plan to make Gaza unbearable, a place where nobody can live at all, whether because of the lack of sanitation, the lack of water, the lack of food, or because of the widespread damage that's existing right there. And that's why, again, the issue is very dangerous. The situation is extremely dangerous. And we've all seen how the Israelis have violated all limitations. They bomb schools, they bomb hospitals, they bomb UN shelters. So definitely that's the aim of all this, is to push Palestinians to leave their land and to empty Gaza for the extremists who want to rebuild settlements there.
Mr. Khalid, you brought up a very important issue and raised a very important point here, which is the international community and the U.S. Role. Now, if I may ask you about the U.S. Role in such developments, particularly after the U.S. has already sent this anti-missile system, the THAAD, and this defense system alongside with 100 American troops to operate. And if I may ask you about its role as a mediator and the credibility of such a role after such developments, and how do you think the U.S. would respond to such Israeli policy of assassination?
Well, I don't think they're going to have much tears to shed about the death of Mr. Sinwar. I mean, as a matter of fact, since the beginning of this war, there's been a joint kind of operation room conducted by the Israelis, by the Americans, by the British, trying to locate Mr. Sinwar and key Hamas leaders. So, I mean, you can definitely say that they are partners in crime. If you consider this development that the Israelis did today amounts to a kind of a violation of the existing rules of engagement in such a kind of situation. But, I mean, by all means, to be very honest, I mean, over more than a year of continuous killing, 42,400 people have been killed so far. The United States has not gone beyond issuing statements calling upon the Israelis to let humanitarian aid in, not to bomb densely populated areas. But the key factor that affects the Israeli ability to continue this genocide war, which is the U.S. weapons that are being provided on a daily basis to the Israelis, this is not something that the Americans, or particularly this Biden administration, seem to be ready to do at all. I mean, particularly for domestic reasons. Unfortunately, this is the U.S. election year. We're having elections for the presidency in a matter of less than 3 weeks. On November 5th, we're talking. So, I mean, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu knows very well that, I mean, daring to touch the generous military support the United States provide Israel would be very costly politically in terms of the presidency, in terms of Congress. So probably that's why we've only seen lip service. Besides the fact, I mean, again, the Israelis and the Americans have been partners since the beginning of this war, and the U.S. administration did not shy away from expressing support for its military campaign against Hamas in Gaza, and more recently against Hezbollah in Lebanon. So, I mean, again, we don't expect much from the U.S. administration, and probably the facts on the ground or the developments on the ground is basically what's going to develop or going to end up in the ceasefire or not. But again, you know, the situation right now is very complicated. Of course, the assassination of Sinwar adds to this complexity. But again, there is another factor which is keeping the entire world in it, which is the expected Israeli strike on Iranian targets that they have been threatening since the Iranians hit Israel with missiles on October 1st. So the situation is very volatile, and the limits of the U.S. administration are very narrow considering the upcoming U.S. elections.
Here you also again raised two important issues, which is first the U.S. elections, which is about in 3 weeks. Let me start with this question, and then we'll go to the this issue of Israeli anticipated strike on Iran. But let me here ask you about the U.S. elections. And do you think we've been seeing today this developments of assassinating Sinwar, but also we've seen at the same day a strike on Jabalia and Netzrin, those areas. And from your point of view, will Israel escalate its strikes at this upcoming stage, particularly before the U.S. elections?
That's what most expectations are. I mean, like, again, this is the golden time for the Israelis to escalate their attacks, whether against the Palestinians in Gaza, as you mentioned rightly. I mean, the miserable, disastrous, situation. There isn't enough words to describe how bad the situation is in northern Gaza. And they've been basically isolated from the rest of the world, and totally denied basic rights, right to food and basic medicine, and attacks against hospitals. So this is likely to escalate, unfortunately, especially after the assassination of Mr. Sinwar. And again, we can see further escalation against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And on top of all that, the exchange threats to attack Iran and a possible Iranian retaliation. And again, we've read some reports that Mr. Biden has contacted the Israeli Prime Minister, asking him not to interfere in the U.S. elections by conducting a major operation against Iran. But that's definitely something that's going to last until after the upcoming elections on November 5th. But between now and November 5th, I think we're going to see 3 heated weeks in terms of Israeli escalation, whether on the Gaza front, the Lebanon front, or the Iran front. And again, this is something that's really pushing the region towards the brink. And if the United States cares about its own interests, they definitely must immediately interfere and bring the Israeli Prime Minister to, first of all, end the war in Gaza, because when the war in Gaza ends, it's going to be possible to calm the situation down on the Lebanese front. And the Iranians themselves have repeatedly said they are not interested in an expanded war against the Israelis, but they only want the war against Palestinians in Gaza to stop. But unfortunately, this is not going to happen in the upcoming 3 weeks. And the reports in the U.S. media are mentioning now that there might be something presented after the U.S. elections. And of course, the results will very much affect the course of action that's going to be followed. If it's Mrs. Harris that's going to win the elections, that's one scenario in which maybe we can see increased pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister. If Mr. Trump wins, I guess that's going to embolden further Mr. Netanyahu, because, Trump, part of his campaign has been to strongly support Israel to finish what he called to finish the job in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Well, that was Mr. Khalid Dawood, a journalist and managing editor of Al Ahram weekly newspaper. We thank you so much for joining us on Q News and for your valuable insights. And moving on with our coverage, and for more analysis, we're joined by Mr. Justin Russell, International Foreign Policy Advisor from Washington. Welcome, Mr. Russell. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. And the implications of this potential assassination of Yahya Sinwar, and what does it have for the U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, particularly in relation to Israel and Palestine?
Well, we have to be realistic about this. In the eyes of the U.S. administration, they're very happy that this is a big win for Israel. Taking out the head of Hamas, whether it was coincidental or part of an intelligence operation, doesn't matter. I've heard people starting to refer to this as Israel's version of the death of Osama bin Laden. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but the reality is this is a huge win. It does disrupt the command cadre inside Hamas, and it's effective. The one side note on this is that, this might be a way forward to kind of give direction to getting some peace talks going, or at least to get some humanitarian assistance into play in Gaza. The reason why I say that is...
Yes, if I may ask you here, you're
yeah.
speaking about humanitarian assistance or aid. While Israel today assassinated Sinwar, who is the leader of Hamas, it also committed another strike on Jabalia Netzarim, which is filled with civilians, unarmed civilians. So how do you think this would give any chance for peace negotiations? And what is the U.S. role, or how would the U.S. really put any kind of strategies to put any kind of peace to such area and have a real ceasefire?
So, I mean, that's a great question, and this is kind of the path forward, I think, in my opinion. With the death of with Yahya Sinwar, it disrupts the command authority inside Hamas, which means that now you may have fragmented cells that doesn't have a leadership command and control structure that's required when you're going up against a military force like the IDF. What this does is anybody that ascends into the position, and this is why the advantage goes to the IDF in this instance, and Mossad, is anybody who ascends into the leadership of Hamas, that entire leadership structure is going to be walking around with their head on a swivel, thinking, is this the day that they get this? There's no question that the IDF and Mossad is very good at the intelligence gathering and the ability to hit very strategic and tactical targets without collateral damage.
Mr.
We
Russell,
saw that with the pager attack.
Mr. Russell, we're speaking about the death of more than 42,000 Palestinians. Most of them are children, women, and elders. We're speaking about the targeting of hospitals, schools. We're speaking what kind of operations or very precise operations is Israel carrying out with, and how good the intelligence is in identifying areas with fighters or Hamas members, or areas with unarmed civilians, Mr. Russell.
And this is where this is a double-edged sword for Benjamin Netanyahu. With the death of Sinwar and the pager attacks, et cetera, it proves that it can do very strategic and very surgical operations, which the other side of that sword doesn't help his cause with the past and the current operations that he's doing inside Gaza and inside Lebanon and possible strikes in Iran. This hurts his ability to continue to say that, look, we are being effective in our military operations. This also puts more pressure on him from the U.S. standpoint that, look, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, and even the president, I'm sure, are looking at this going, okay, you have the win. You took out the head of Hamas. Sinwar's dead. Now you have to seriously look at the fact that now that you've taken out the top yet again, how do you fix and come up with a peaceful solution now? This is going to put global pressure on Netanyahu and the Israeli government to come up with a solution that not only kind of draws back the military operations inside both Gaza and put pressure on the operation in Lebanon. But this is also going to have pressure to mitigate the ongoing humanitarian crisis inside Gaza and now going on inside Lebanon. That is where the biggest source of U.S. and Western ally pressure is coming from on Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Is the fact that every time they do a massive operation, the operation has civilian collateral damage, which does not look good in the eyes of Western leaders.
Which does not look good. Mr. Russell, if I may ask you here about the U.S. role in pressuring Israel not to target civilians, and how do you see that role, and which kind of pressures were put on Israel on this course, particularly after the U.S. sent its anti-missile system THAAD, this defense system, along with 100 American troops to operate. What kind of strategies and what kind of pressures is the U.S. really putting on Israel to avoid targeting or the targeting of civilians?
Well, I want to clarify one aspect of your question. Is we have to remember that the THAAD system is a strictly defensive tool. It is a very strategically defensive weapon system that is very effective. That is a supplement to Iron Dome. The reason why we sent the THAAD battery over to Israel is because that coincides with the U.S. policy of always being able to defend Israel and the citizens of Israel against an offensive attack, like we saw back on October 1st when Iran sent over the missiles. Where the pressure comes now, to the second part of your question, is we saw that announcement from from all three, from the State Department, the Defense Department, and the White House, where they said that you have 30 days to mitigate and fix the ongoing humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza, mitigate and kind of minimize the humanitarian impact in Lebanon. The incentive is, if they do not, we are going to have to abide by U.S. law and re-examine the types and how many or how much defense spending and the type of systems and the use of those systems in your operations in Gaza and Lebanon.
But Mr.
What the
Russell,
White House is saying, and what
in this month you gave to Israel, the number of casualties has risen to the double. And now we're moving on and on with more casualties from unarmed civilians. So we're speaking here about unarmed civilians who are getting attacked by the Israeli forces, who say they are defending themselves from the Palestinian resistance, the Hamas, or any of the fighters. If I may ask you here, where is the balance? Where is the balance? Where is the proper use of force, or the appropriate use of force between both sides? In 1 month, we're speaking about double the number of civilian casualties. Most of them are children and women.
I completely understand. And let me be clear. My answers are not condoning the civilian casualties or the use of force that results in civilian casualties. You know, as a former member of military forces and a civilian policy analyst now, I got to tell you something. Anytime we see any sort of military operation that results in the loss of civilian life, particularly that of the elderly, the women, children, that is never condoned, and that is nothing that I would stand for in any of my analysis. So I completely understand where you're going with this question. What I am saying, though, is that what is happening now here in Washington, going back to the original point of the question of how does Washington put pressure on, is the fact that now that we've seen Israel be able to conduct a very surgical strike on these individuals, whether by luck or by intelligence gathering or by operational ability, the pressure now is coming from Washington to say, look, we can no longer, even by our own laws, we are talking about, the White House now looking at auditing all of the foreign military sales and how that complies with the Arms Export Control Act and how that applies to the Administrative Procedures Act. There was a lawsuit that was brought back many years ago here in Washington where an organization tried to block the sale of F-35s to the United Arab Emirates because of their involvement in the Libyan civil war. The basis of that lawsuit is exactly what the White House is trying to use in saying, look, you cannot keep using weapons that the U.S. sells to Israel and there being mass casualties of civilians and women, children, and targeting of civilian infrastructure, because that is against U.S. law. That violates the Arms Export Control Act. The law is very clear, and I think that is the angle, and that is...
Hello? Right. I guess that was Mr. Justin Russell, a global foreign policy advisor. Thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And for more information, we now have from Washington Mr. Nizar Farsakh, Professor of International Law. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Now, Mr. Farsakh, thank you so much for joining us. And what legal frameworks govern the actions of states in targeting individuals such as Yahya Sinwar in conflict zones, and how do these frameworks apply in this case?
Well, definitely there's the principle of proportionality. That is, the military needs to focus on the military purpose and consider different options, and then go with the option that is likely to result in the least amount of civilian casualties. So that, of course, could be subjective. One country might think it has a certain option that works better than the other. But in the case of Israel, it's hard to argue that they were actually trying to avoid civilian casualties, given the disproportionate number of civilians that get killed every time Israel targets a person. So that's the general rule, international rule.
Mm-hmm. How does the international law address the principles of proportionality and the necessity in military operations, and especially in the context of civilian casualties, as you spoke about this during operations like those in Gaza, and how the international community is really acting towards that?
That is the challenge with international law, that ultimately it is the law that sovereign nations agree on and agree to abide by. But in the end, it doesn't mean that states actually go ahead and do that. What happens is any country or any group can make an argument that there has been a breach of international law. They can take it to the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court and make the legal argument. But then, even if they prove that that's the case, as was the case with Israel and the issue of genocide, it's up to states to take that legal verdict and do something with it. Just like Britain, for example, stopped the transfer of 5 types of weapons, I believe, to Israel, and likewise Spain and other countries. So it becomes an instrument that makes that justifies the actions of states.
What implications does the potential assassination of Sinwar have for the legal status of Hamas as a non-state actor under international law?
It doesn't change anything, just we don't know who the head of Hamas is. Hamas will have to announce who the new leader is. but that does not change the status of Hamas as a political party or as a militant movement either.
Here I might raise also the question of the international law regarding the humanitarian aspects and the influence of the law and the accountability of Israel in targeting civilians.
Yes, so this has to do with the responsibility of states in protecting civilians and avoiding civilian harm in war. But in addition to that, the fact that Israel controls the borders of the Gaza Strip, it is responsible for making sure that humanitarian aid, water, electricity, all of the necessities of life are catered to. And Israel has not been doing that. It's imposed a siege for 17 years, which is illegal. They can make a siege to, for example, a fortified military installation, but they cannot lay siege to a city or a place where there are civilians and cause starvation and cause medical harm because of lack of medicine and what have you. That is against international law. But of course, Israel makes the argument that it is doing its best, quote unquote, in support or providing humanitarian aid. But of course, the evidence is to the contrary.
If I may ask you also reiterate the question in other words, how might the actions of Israel in this context be scrutinized under the international law?
It's obvious from the number of trucks that actually make it to the Gaza Strip, the fact that there has been incidents where the Israeli authorities stopped trucks from going in, or in fact there were some Israeli civilians who stopped trucks and the Israeli authorities did not do anything about them, right? So they allowed the Israeli civilians to attack those trucks. All of that shows intention of denying Palestinians their rights to humanitarian aid, as opposed to the claim that Israel is doing its best. If it was doing its best, it wouldn't have allowed these actions to happen.
Now, what role do you see for international legal institutions such as the International Criminal Court in addressing the potential violations of laws stemming from such situations?
Well, they already did by stating that Israel is an occupying power, by stating that there are credible grounds for believing that there is a genocide that's happening. And what's important in that is you don't need to prove that there is a genocide. Rather, you need to prove that there is a reasonable accounts to believe that there is a genocide for countries to be obligated to stop sending weapons or supporting the genocide. What they could do more is to actually give more specifics on what states can or cannot do or should not do. Specifics on what does that, what does not aiding genocide entail in specific steps.
Mr. Nizar, what or how do the international law, deal with targeted assassinations, as some of which happened or took place by the Israeli forces? How do the international law deal with those cases?
There isn't anything specific on targeted assassinations. It falls within the same rubric of avoiding civilian casualties. So long as a person is militarily active, even if a soldier is not even carrying a weapon and is moving around, they are still a legitimate target. The extrajudicial killings would be for civilians or people who are not combatants. You are not allowed to kill them, of course. You are allowed to arrest them if you have suspicion that they are involved, but you may not target them for killing. But military or combatants, people who are known to be combatants, even if they're not carrying weapons, you may target them. The question becomes, the only limit is how much you work on avoid civilian casualties. If you're not trying to avoid civilian casualties, then that's a crime.
then targeting more than 42,000 civilians, unarmed civilians, most of them children and women who are definitely unarmed. How would the international law, or how is the international law supposed to be dealing with such a case?
Well, it wouldn't look at the whole number. It would look incident by incident. That is, a certain attack, was that attack lawful or not? The general number, the fact that there is a very big proportion of the deaths being civilian, is evidence, or is circumstantial evidence, let's say, that Israel is not doing its best to avoid civilian casualties. So it's just the fact that the number or the proportion of civilian casualties is so much higher than any other conflict that it makes it very hard for Israel to argue that it is doing its best, because other countries have had conflicts and they haven't had that number of, or that proportion of civilians being casualties. So it's circumstantial. It's not something specific that is directly incriminating.
And what is exactly the number of casualties that will enable the international law to interfere and find a way to deal with such casualties? What is exactly the number?
Unfortunately, there isn't a number. That's what I was trying to say, is that from an international law perspective, it doesn't give an absolute number. It tries to prove intent, tries to show that even if you are trying, you say that you're trying to avoid civilian casualties, there is evidence that you're not, then you're incriminated. It's not about the number, but about the general or the total.
So let me here take my questions, or reiterate my questions in other words. What would make the international law interfere, or the international community interfere through the process of the international laws in such cases, or in the killing or the genocides that are committed? When does the international law say that those are genocides, those are just killing or casualties of war? What exactly? Where is the criteria? What is the criteria of the international law in these cases?
So, what would?
When would the international
Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, establishes if a crime has been committed, if a human right has been violated, and then countries, states, take actions accordingly. So organizations can sue their country, can sue their, let's say, Ministry of Defense if it sold weapons to Israel, knowing that Israel is committing, or there is reasonable evidence that it's committing genocide. So the law itself becomes an instrument. What makes a change is the actions that states take because of or using those legal instruments. Because in international law, there is no executive branch that applies the verdict of the court the way we have in any country. So it is really up to the states, the countries. So we saw how, for example, in Rwanda, nobody moved because nobody cared about Rwanda. And likewise, in the problems that are happening in Congo and Sudan, it's really a question of what the global community cares about and what it pays attention to. Just like, for example, the difference between how they deal with Ukraine compared to Palestine. Like, it's exactly the same case, and yet still the international community behaves differently because of its own, national interest calculations.
Yes. So it's upon the criteria put by the international community at large. That was Mr. Nizar Farsakh, Professor of International Law from Washington. Thank you so much, Mr. Nizar, for your time and your valuable insight. So we continue on with our coverage, and We're still in our coverage on Qnews on the assassination of Hamas leader Sinwar, and which took place earlier. We're still discussing the about of the assassination of Sinwar and what is expected after the killing of the Hamas leader. We're also discussing the destruction of Gaza and the strikes that were also carried out on Jabalia and Netzarim, and what would that lead to. We'll continue our coverage with our colleague Riham in minutes.
You're still watching Q News, and we're still covering the latest updates when it comes to the possible assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, and during an operation in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupation forces and the security agency have issued a joint statement discussing the possibility of Sinwar's death and the military activities in Gaza. The Israeli army spokesperson has stated there is a chance that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been assassinated, but emphasized that at this stage they cannot confirm his death. According to the statement, during an Israeli forces operation in Gaza, 3 Hamas members were killed, and both the army and Israel's security agency are investigating whether Sinwar was among them. However, they reiterated that it is not yet possible to definitively identify those killed. The statement had also noted there are no indications of hostages, rather detainees, in the targeted buildings, adding that the army and security agency continues to operate in the field under necessary precautionary measures. It is worth mentioning that Hamas announced on August 6th that Yahya Sinwar was elected as the head of its political bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh. Previously, on July 31st, Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, the former head of Hamas's political bureau and the former Palestinian prime minister, in the Iranian capital of Tehran, where he was visiting for the inauguration of the new Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Haniyeh was killed alongside his personal bodyguard, field leader in the Qassam Brigades, Wasim Abu Jaban. Israeli media outlets have disclosed the methods employed by the Israeli military in its announcement of the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, following clashes in the Tell el-Sultan area of Rafah. Reports have indicated that the operation to eliminate Sinwar was conducted without prior arrangements or specific intelligence, as the Israeli army was already conducting operations in the Tell el-Sultan region. The confirmation of Sinwar's DNA match was possible because the Israeli authorities had obtained a previous sample from him, along with a medical file from his time as a prisoner in Israeli custody. Earlier, Israeli Army radio reported that the confrontation with Sinwar took place in the Tell el-Sultan, where he was seen wearing military gear alongside another field leader. The Israeli Army and the security services stated in a joint announcement that they are investigating the possibility of having eliminated Sinwar during what was described as a military activity in Gaza. The statement also noted that the bodies of 3 individuals labeled as militants were recovered, and investigations are ongoing to determine whether one of them was Sinwar, though a final confirmation of their identities has not yet been made. The Israeli military also confirmed that there were no indications of any Israeli detainees being present in the building where the operation took place. According to the newspaper Yedioth Ahronoth, the operation also targeted Hamas leader Mahmoud Hamdan and Hani Hamdan alongside Sinwar. Following the Al-Aqsa flood operations on October 7, 2023, Yahya Sinwar became Israel's top target, along with Muhammad Dif, the commander of the Izz al-Qassam ad-Din brigades. The removal of Sinwar was a key strategy and objective of the Israeli military operation in Gaza, named Iron Swords, as Israeli officials consider him the mastermind behind the October 7th attack. To help us to analyze the situation right now, we are joined by Mr. Hassan Al-Daja, Professor of Strategic Studies from Amman. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Sir, firstly, how does the potential elimination of Yahya Sinwar affect or impact Israel's strategic objectives in the region? Because this was one of the top objectives for Israel.
Good evening to you and to all. I think even the assassination of Yahya Sinwar will not affect the resistance of Palestinians in Gaza. I think they will replace him by other leader, as it's usually done after any assassination of the Hamas leader. And we have seen that Sinwar is replaced by Ismail Haniyeh replaced by Yahya Sinwar. I think the other leaders will continue the movement of resistance, and this is okay. Will consider as a tactical winning of Israeli occupied army, but it's not a strategic winning of the war, because still the resistance are continuously is working. And the many casualties of the Israeli armed forces is happened in Gaza, and still there is no, let's say, stability of the situation in Gaza, and Israelis just killing the people, civilian people, and this incident of the assassination is come by chance. It's not come by well-organized process to follow up the Sinwar. So I think...
But sir, from the perspective of the Israelis themselves, this is like a declare victory moment for them, because this is the top objective that they had, other than returning the detainees back home. At this point, at this stage, if the news is confirmed, do you think that the Israelis may say, like, we've declared victory and that's that, it's over?
There is opportunity for Israel to say that we are gaining the victory upon Hamas, but the resistance will remain continuously to resist against and fight against the occupied Israeli armed forces. But it's a chance for Israeli government to say that we have achieved many objectives of our war in Gaza, and start negotiation to stop the war and go for exchange of hostages with Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli jails and prisons. So this is if Netanyahu is willing to stop the war, he can at this moment claim that he won the war by killing Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar at the same time, and then he will go through negotiation to return the hostages. But I don't think that Netanyahu is concerned with the hostages. Netanyahu is concerned with the continuously in his office as a political leader, prime minister for Israel. That is why I don't think that he will get this opportunity to start negotiation through Egypt and Qatar to go for releasing the hostages and exchange prisoners, Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails.
So,
yes.
so in your opinion, sir, like you said, that Netanyahu wants to prolong this. So you think that this is an opportunity for them, or a possibility rather, for a possible escalation in the situation, and this becoming more of a regional war spreading, since we've seen, a number of leaders from like Hamas and Hezbollah as well being assassinated? Could there be an escalation?
We have the example when they done the Israeli done the assassination of Hezbollah. We have seen that Hezbollah is still continuing to attack Israeli by missiles and by drones. So this is example. Then what will happen in Gaza? It will continue at the same. But Netanyahu is searching for escalation of the war. He wants to bring America to face with Iran. But I think America is rejecting this suggestion, and they don't want to extend this military activities to be a comprehensive war in the Middle East. Neither Iran want to go on comprehensive war, neither Israel without America. But if America support the Israeli aim, then Netanyahu, he wants to be continuously to go to a comprehensive war. Netanyahu is saying that he wants to change the Middle East map, political map. So his dream is this purpose for his escalation of the war. Yes.
Okay, so in what ways might this incident alter the balance of power among various factions within the Palestinian territories? Because obviously this is quite a big blow for Hamas, if it is confirmed, that is.
I don't think that Netanyahu's government, which is led by extremist Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that they will stop the war, and they prefer to go in escalations in Gaza and in South Lebanon at the same time. And I think they want to withdraw other parties in the Middle East to go in war that is serving their aims in general.
Okay.
Yes.
You were saying there are other parties as well, that might enter into a more broader regional war. Recently, we've seen the U.S. send, the THAAD missiles along with 100 U.S. troops. How significant or how important is this? And do you believe that this may have shifted what's happening on the ground or shifted the strategies of war?
I think Israelis cannot attack Iran unless they get a guarantee from the United States to help them to defend themselves, because they know that Iran, they get Russian technical for their missiles that can reach to their goals and places in occupied territories of Palestine without what you can say reaching these places without objection from the defense of Israel. So that it's as a strong support from United States to defend Israel if there is a reply attack after the Israeli attack to the Iranian territories. Yes.
Okay, that was Mr. Hassan Al-Dajjal, Professor of Strategic Studies, joining us from Amman. Thank you so much, Mr. Dajjal, for joining us here on Q, and thank you for your insights. In a significant development, the Israeli occupation army has confirmed the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, during an operation in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupation forces and the security agency have issued a joint statement discussing the possibility of Sinwar's death amid military activity in Gaza. The Israeli army spokesperson has stated there is a chance that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been assassinated, but emphasized that at this stage they cannot confirm his death. According to the statement, during an Israeli forces operation in Gaza, 3 Hamas members were also killed, and both the army and Israel's security agency are investigating whether Sinwar was among them. However, they reiterated that it is not yet possible to definitively identify those killed. The statement also noted that there are no indications of detainees in the targeted building, adding that the army and security agency continues to operate in the field under necessary precautionary measures. It's also worth noting that Hamas announced on August 6th that Yahya Sinwar was elected as the head of the political bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh. Previously, on the 31st of July, Israel had assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, the former head of Hamas's political bureau and the former Palestinian prime minister, in the Iranian capital of Tehran, where he was visiting for the inauguration of the new Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Haniyeh was killed alongside his personal bodyguard and field leader in the Qassam brigades, Wasim Abu Shaban. Still covering the situation, the ongoing situation where there is a possibility of the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. The Israeli army has said that it is very possible, doing DNA testings and so forth. This happened during clashes in Tel Sultan area in Rafah, where the Israeli army targeted 3 militants, what they said is 3 militants, and they will claim that there is a very good possibility that one of those eliminated was Yahya Sinwar. And they did DNA testing to match Sinwar. This is based on previous records that the Israeli authorities had on him from samples and medical files for him during his time as a prisoner in Israeli custody. Also earlier, before this happened, the Israeli army and radio reported that the confrontation with Sinwar took place in Tel Sultan, where he was seen wearing military gear alongside another field leader. The Israeli army and the security services stated in a joint announcement that they are investigating the possibility of having eliminated Sinwar during this operation. It is also important to note that Yahya Sinwar had taken the lead of Hamas in August, and he has been assassinated. His previous predecessor, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated at the end of July, on the 31st of July. This means in less than 3 months, 2 leaders of Hamas have been removed from their positions. And the Israeli military also confirmed that there were no indications of any Israeli detainees being present at the building during the time of the operation. According to an Israeli newspaper, Yedioth Ahronoth, the operation also targeted Hamas leader Mahmoud Hamdan and Hani Hamdan alongside Sinwar. Following the Al-Aqsa flood operation that took place on October 7, 2023, Yahya Sinwar became Israel's top target, along with Muhammad Deif, the commander of Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. With the removal of Sinwar being a key strategic objective for the Israeli operations in Gaza that were named Iron Swords, as Israeli officials consider him the mastermind behind the October 7th attacks. And we're going to continue on to cover what is happening right now in Gaza. A lot has been happening in addition to the possibility of the assassination of the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. The Israeli army has conducted plans and operations within the north of Gaza, cutting it off completely from the rest of Gaza. This may also be part of, a broader operations within the Gaza Strip. The plans for northern Gaza had been dubbed the General's Plan. Within the next few days or hours, we may know more information about these operations and if it's part of a larger plan within the Israeli forces or the Israeli leaders' thoughts towards how they will conduct themselves in the next days or months to come, and whether this means an escalation with other actors within the region. And we also would like to talk about the previous statements from a number of countries, especially to do with escalations, not just in Gaza, but with what is happening in Lebanon. In recent times, the US had come out with a statement giving the Israelis 30 days to end their operations in the north of Gaza. And there has been a lot of speculation as to why it is 30 days, but there seems to be more and surmounting pressure on the Israelis to end their operations within Gaza, and there has been an outcry from a number of countries stating that the civilian death toll is unimaginable, and there's a lot of controversy regarding the operations on Gaza on the ground. Also, it should be noted, if you go back to Yahya Sinwar himself, Yahya Sinwar emerged as a controversial figure in recent times, especially since October 7th, gaining attention not only in the Middle East but globally. He served as the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and is primarily responsible for the ceasefire negotiations on behalf of the organization. In August, he was appointed the head of Hamas movement following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. However, his tenure was reportedly short-lived as the Israeli army announced assassination of 3 fighters during a clash in Rafah in southern Gaza, suggesting that Sinwar may have been among them. Israeli media has indicated that Sinwar could have been assassinated. So the question here is, who is Yahya Sinwar? A little bit of a detailed history about Yahya Sinwar's life. He was born in 1962 in Khan Yunis refugee camp in southern Gaza, and Sinwar has been involved with Hamas since its inception in the late 80s. He co-founded the movement's military wing, the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, and played a crucial role in developing its intelligence capabilities. Sinwar was first arrested by Israel in 1988 and sentenced to life imprisonment for his involvement in the kidnapping and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers. During his imprisonment, doctors saved his life when he developed a brain disease and underwent surgery in Israeli hospitals. He spent 23 years in Israeli prisons before being released in 2011 during the Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange deal, which saw over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners freed. Sinwar became an influential figure among the Palestinian prisoners. And in 2013, he joined the political bureau of Hamas, and by 2017, he had risen to become the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And then last August, Hamas announced that it had chosen Sinwar as the head of the movement's political bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated by the Israelis in Tehran. Again, we're still covering the latest updates when it comes to the possibility and assassination of Yahya Sinwar, where the Israeli army has said that they have conducted DNA testings to confirm that the person assassinated was Yahya Sinwar. And again, just to remind our viewers that Yahya Sinwar is the second leader of Hamas's political bureau to be assassinated in less than 3 months. Many questions may come to mind where the possibility of a ceasefire negotiation, what will happen to that, how will the world react if the assassination of Yahya Sinwar is confirmed, could there be a possibility of further escalations within the region, and how will the Israeli government conduct itself within Gaza Strip? Will they declare this an outright victory and possibly go to the negotiating table, or push further for further escalations in the region? Also important to note that many countries have said that they are unhappy with the way the Israeli army has conducted itself, especially when it comes to Lebanon, in addition to Gaza, where Israel has decimated almost 70% of the Strip and has killed over 42,000 people in the Strip, in addition to almost 100,000 people who have been injured. And also, the Israeli Broadcasting Authority had earlier said in breaking news that fingerprint analysis confirmed a positive match with the fingerprint of Yahya Sinwar that was registered with security agencies. In response, the Israeli police confirmed that they identified Sinwar's body based on dental records, and further examinations are currently underway. Earlier, the Israeli Army radio had reported that they confronted Sinwar in Tel Sultan Rafah in southern Gaza, where he was seen wearing military gear alongside another field leader. The Israeli Army and the Shin Bet security services stated in a joint statement that they are still investigating the possibility of having eliminated Sinwar despite the fingerprints, and that military activities in Gaza were taking place, and they have yet to confirm. A statement noted that the bodies of the 3 individuals referred to as militants were found, and investigations were ongoing to determine whether one of them was Sinwar, although a final confirmation of their identities has not yet been made. It's also important to note that this is one of the Israeli objectives for what is happening since October 7th, 2023. One of the main objectives was to assassinate Yahya Sinwar, who's considered the mastermind behind the October 7th attacks, known as Al-Aqsa flood operations. And also, it is one of the other targets is Muhammad Deif, the commander of the Azziddin al-Qassam brigades as well. The operations within Gaza were named or dubbed by the Israelis as Iron Swords. The operation's mandate was to eliminate Yahya Sinwar, dismantle Hamas, and retrieve the detainees in the Gaza Strip as well. It's also important to note that during the operation to eliminate or assassinate Yahya Sinwar, the Israeli army had said they had not found any of the detainees in the area where Yahya Sinwar was located, and many detainees are still there in Gaza. And it seems that the ceasefire negotiations are further than they were before. Going back to the previous leader of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, he was assassinated in Tehran as he went there to the inauguration of the new Iranian president in a bombing in an apartment where he was staying with his aide. Haniyeh was in Tehran leading a Hamas delegation to participate in the inauguration ceremony of the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. After Haniyeh was buried in the Qatari capital Doha, the movement began internal elections to choose a successor, where they announced on Tuesday, August 6, 2024, that its Shura Council had unanimously elected Yahya Sinwar as the new leader of the movement. Just now, the U.S. President Joe Biden received a briefing aboard the Air Force One while he was en route to Germany concerning the Israeli army's announcement of the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar during a military operation in Gaza, according to U.S. media outlets. A source informed AFP that Biden was updated on these developments while traveling to Berlin for talks with European leaders regarding the war in Ukraine and the crisis in the Middle East. A U.S. Department of Defense official confirmed to American media that the United States is aware of the reports regarding the death of Hamas's leader Yahya Sinwar and that they are still in the assessment phase. The official stated that they are aware of the reports regarding Sinwar's death and are still processing the information as it comes along. They added that it is too early to discuss the implications of Sinwar's death if confirmed, emphasizing that Washington welcomes any step that brings Israelis closer to achieving their goals, a ceasefire, and returning the detainees home. The Channel 12 in Israel had also reported that the families of Israeli hostages are urging that Yahya Sinwar's death be used as an opportunity to stop the war and reach an immediate agreement for the return of their loved ones. The families of the prisoners expressed concern about the fate of their relatives held by Hamas in Gaza. The Israeli army had confirmed on Thursday that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed during an operation in Gaza, with Channel 13 reporting that the assassination took place in Tel al-Sultan area of Rafah, where he was wearing military gear alongside another field leader. The Israeli army also released unverified images related to the alleged assassination of Yahya Sinwar, according to Hebrew media. Earlier on Thursday, the Israeli army indicated that it was likely that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who had been killed in the operation in Gaza, noting that DNA testing on a body believed to be Sinwar's returned with a positive result. Hamas announced on August 6th that Yahya Sinwar had been elected as the head of its political bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh, and this is two leaders of Hamas who had been assassinated in less than 3 months. As the U.S. statement had also said that it is too early to assess the implications of the possibility of the assassination of Yahya Sinwar. And over to Hamas. Hamas movement has denied issuing any official statement regarding the confirmation or denial of the assassination of Yahya Sinwar. Today, the Israeli Army radio announced the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar during an operation in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli media revealed new details about what it termed the assassination operation of Yahya Sinwar, stating that the leader of Hamas was assassinated this afternoon. On Thursday, according to an announcement from an Israeli army just a short while ago, Israeli media had reported that Sinwar was targeted without prior coordination or intelligence information as the Israeli army was conducting operations in the Tell al-Sultan area of Rafah city today. The Israeli army radio stated today, Thursday, that its forces managed to target the head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, in the Gaza Strip, and that DNA evidence had been confirmed that it is Yahya Sinwar. Again, the world is still reacting to the possibility of the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, with many countries coming out with statements that they're still assessing the situation on the ground to see the implications of this move. Reuters reported that Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz announced the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. Earlier today, the Israeli army confirmed that Sinwar had been killed during the operations in Gaza. Israeli media outlets revealed new details about what they referred to as the operation to assassinate Sinwar, stating that the Hamas leader was killed this afternoon, according to the Israeli army. Israeli media reported that the targeting of Sinwar was conducted without prior arrangements or intelligence information, as the Israeli army was carrying out operations in Tell al-Sultan area of Rafah today. The Israeli army radio had stated that its forces successfully targeted Yahya Sinwar, the head of the political bureau of Hamas in Gaza, confirming the DNA match. That brings us to the end of our live coverage. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG for the latest developments.